Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the public safety meeting for the city of Hudson. On May 4th, 2023, we will call to order and we'll do a roll call. Hall,
Here.
Wakefield,
Here.
and I'm here as well. Number 3, parking. Not sure why that one's there, do you?
No, I don't know.
We'll skip it for now. Number 4, approval of the April 27th meeting minutes.
Move to approve with corrections of Chief Spielman's, the spelling of Chief Spielman's name.
And do you want to spell it for the record?
Spielman. I before E.
Okay, because the same person is taking notes.
You had it right 1 of 4 times.
I'll second.
Any further corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, new business. Discussion on Altissimo dog washing event, June 25th, 2023. This is a normal event, I think, though. 21 years.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion or concerns from the chiefs?
None.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And number 5B, discussion regarding Carmichael Road and Center Drive safety. I know, Lynn, you had brought it up. Chief, do you want to kind of bring us up to date, or is that Aaron's too?
That's not mine.
Well, no. Basically, before Aaron's time, Dean was working on this one. We do have significant number of pretty high-speed crashes at that intersection, and mostly because people making left-hand turns when driving southbound on Center Drive can't see. So there was a request to make it a dedicated green turn arrow, and then that goes red before everybody else starts going north and south. But there was an entire control head that had to be purchased for that. So I don't know how much of that, if anything, you're aware of.
Yeah, I'm aware of like this, that we're doing improvements for safety, but
For the public's benefit, will you introduce yourself as well?
yeah, I'm Erin McPhee Anderson, the new city engineer.
Thanks, Aaron. So has it been purchased, or have we, I thought
Right now, I guess I'm not sure on the purchasing of it. I know we're going through the traffic timing. We're doing the traffic timing study through the whole corridor actually. But I'm not aware, I guess, of the actual purchasing of the
Because I know
equipment.
we approved it out of here. and
Okay.
I believe we funded it.
Okay.
And then for whatever, because people kept trying to take the money for something else. So we've
Okay.
been keeping sure it stays because of the issue up there.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a project that we've kind of moved forward with. I'm just not sure if like a purchase has actually been made.
Were there supposed to be some repairs made to Carmichael before the timing of the lights was changed? Or was it just installing that?
I think it's just installing
Oh,
that.
installing
Are you
that piece,
talking about
okay.
roadway like improvements or?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have it on our, it is in the CIP to do like a mill and overlay or reclamation project, but that wouldn't really,
Okay.
wouldn't affect the signals.
okay.
No
There
turn
was-
lanes.
No, or the turn lanes, yeah, so I'm just aware of more of just a surface rehab versus
Okay.
any sort of bigger changes.
And has that been scheduled, or is that?
That is in the CIP, I would have to open up which.
Oh, don't worry about
year-
that.
Which year it was,
Mhm,
but,
but it's-
and that's
okay.
just south of 94, yep, so where
Yep.
this signal is, so.
So
that
if,
is- yeah.
if my history was recollected, we approved the lights.
I believe so,
purchase of
yeah.
that. But I know we approved and did the changes at Hanley and Carmichael, and we were doing a stop light at Center and Carmichael for the very thing you're talking about. So we just need to find out where we're at with that and get that
Sure,
kind of
if you want an
expedited,
update.
like,
Okay,
And my understanding too, in talking to Councilmember Knutson, that there may be some state funding that has arrived for that as well, for that issue because of its location.
yep,
So to keep that in mind too, that for some additional funding for, because they're,
yep.
to replace the whole thing.
We did get a grant, yes.
Yeah, a grant,
Yep,
okay.
related to safety.
And so then they also have a say in when and how and such as well when the grant comes or not.
Right.
Okay.
That might have been
Yeah, that
what
would
I was
be-
thinking was that we were waiting for the grant, not for
Right.
repairs. Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe you could get us that information for
Yeah.
the next meeting?
Yes, I can do that.
And if maybe even is too soon for the next council meeting or our next public safety?
No,
meeting?
I think it'd be pretty easy to track down where we're at with that, with the project.
Okay,
So if we're just do it at the council meeting then maybe,
yeah, let's find out where we're at with that.
on the 15th? Okay. Yep, that'll be easy.
Thank you. Any other comments, Lynn, on that?
no, it's good.
Let's figure out where we're at.
Yep,
and Get
yeah.
on it. Okay, good, thank you, Aaron. 5C, discussion regarding the right-of-way concerns of Old Highway 35 and Hanley Road.
That's also me. I've received several emails from residents in the community over there that butt up to Old Highway 35. And there's a concern there of where Hanley comes and meets Old 35. There's a stop sign from Hanley onto Old 35, but the traffic going, there's no stop sign the other way. It's just a two-way there. And concerns of getting on that road, excessive speed and traffic. However, looking at the information we have here, looks like when it's a shared road like that one is with the town, I believe, I don't know how much of that is shared road, that might not be at our discretion to determine. They would like it a little slower there,
What's the speed limit along? there?
45.
Oh, okay.
And
Especially with that apartment building going in.
the new apartment buildings there, so I think traffic's going to be a little more difficult to get out onto Old Highway 35. I guess I've talked with Mike too about which parts would it have to be, a joint effort between the town and the city.
So uniformly, you're talking Hanley or 35 specifically?
Well-
Speed?
The speed on 35, but getting onto 35, if you're coming from Hanley, is difficult. Many trucks, it's very loud with the empty trucks, rumbling through, not going 35, going faster than 30, or 45, going faster than that. And they're just concerned about the safety, especially with the new apartment building.
gonna
That
be
will
really
be
hard.
opening up very soon. That will be increased traffic, pedestrian as well in that area.
Well, it'll be hard for the apartment residents to get in and out of their
Yeah.
driveway as well.
So you're looking to slow the speed down or?
Slow the speed down,
Install a four-way
After-
stop?
yeah. However, in looking at the information we received on our, kind of that toolbox of trying, these traffic calming policies, sometimes stop signs actually
Make things
can
worse?
make things worse, and that people are quickly decelerating and more rapidly accelerating.
Right,
So it might be a good thing to include when we're looking at the policy for all of the cities, so we might be able to just keep this in mind when we're looking at those.
Aaron, have you had a chance to review that? I mean, we can skip over and come back to this later after you go through your presentation.
Of this specific intersection?
Yes.
No. I haven't looked at details for it. I am looking at like our GIS map and if that's even within our city limits, like Old Highway 35.
Between
at
Hanley
the
and
edge.
Stage Line, it's a shared, that's
split
town
down,
as well,
Split
yeah.
down the middle, so.
So
yeah,
one side's
That was a
ours.
difficult thing also with road repair, because
Right.
besides the pothole on.
Yep, so,
But there are residents that are concerned about that, if we could keep that, in mind as we address traffic calming policy.
Another month work for you?
I think so, I
with
think
that?
so.
I know you're busy getting
Yeah.
up to date.
But just so
Yeah.
that she can be aware that we keep that in mind and look at some possible options.
Okay,
sure, okay.
so we won't take any formal action, but to put it on our next meeting agenda.
So we really have a list of traffic calming areas that we have to address.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll move on to 5D, the bus traffic on Chestnut Drive. Maybe you want to hold off until we go through that, or is this a different request?
Let me just go over it pretty quickly. So, first, well, part of it is the buses are driving really fast, but the biggest problem that I see is, okay, the road was not designed for bus traffic.
Right.
And so, all right, so then they make a right turn from Vine onto Chestnut, so that's one turn. Then they make another turn from Chestnut onto Ash, or I mean, no, Vine onto Grandview, Grandview to Ash, Ash onto Chestnut. Then there's a curve on Chestnut. Then they make another turn on Chestnut to Maple, then Maple to Oak, and then into the parking lot of the school. So that's 7 turns. It's ripping up the roads. It's really hard for the buses to get past each other, too, at each of those intersections. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense to have the buses back there, especially when Vine Street is really designed for buses. This was not. So what I would really like to see is have the buses rerouted onto Vine Street instead of back there.
That seems a bigger task than I would, I
Yeah.
think. But Jeff, have we had any contact with the school district or the bus company about the speeding of the traffic of the buses, or?
No, last comments I had from you, I said when people have those complaints to get me the bus numbers,
Right.
and I haven't heard
Okay.
anything. So we have not contacted the school district about it, because what are we gonna ask them?
So we need a little self-policing up there.
Well, but the other thing is they're ripping up the road with all of those right turns. I mean, you've got a lot of buses. If you look at all the potholes on Chestnut and Ash, it's really bad.
What would be the number of students affected by not being able to be picked up from there that would have to walk a distance to get to a stop on Vine?
No, it would be, so what's going on is that the buses come from the middle school to the high school. So it's a group of buses, so it's a parade of buses.
In the afternoon, it's
In
the
the morning?
opposite in the morning.
Okay, so
morning
it's
and
not,
afternoon.
there's no bus stops there, it's just
No,
to
it's,
get to start
it's
the
just
road?
to get
Okay.
get to the high school.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I don't even know how many buses, but probably 25 to 30 that are going in and out. And, you know, I mean, it's a parade, and then, you know, the first ones drop off and then come back out. And so then they're all trying to negotiate the curves at the same time. And then some of them are also going the opposite way on Oak Street and going around the curve on Oak and 12th. And there's not even enough room for 2 buses to be there. There's not enough room there for 2 cars to pass each other on that one, much less 2 buses. So it's just not a safe method.
I think our next step for our next meeting is we need to have either, well, both the school district representative and a bus company representative and meet with us, public safety,
Yep, and Aaron too.
Jeff, and we go from there.
Okay,
And try to, you know, the road thing, I hear you, but that's kind of a,
well, Mike Mirage should be there too to talk about the
Yeah.
impact on the road if he's available.
yeah. So next meeting, you know, and this all stops during, summer break. So we've got a little time. I don't
Right.
think we're gonna be able to get it addressed.
It would be nice to have it addressed before the school starts again in the
Is
fall, but.
this a motion?
Sure. I'm moving to recommend we have at our next meeting a tabletop discussion with the school district, the bus company, our city engineer and our city public works director, and our chief of police.
I'll second that.
And we hopefully can come up with a solution up there. And once we get through this next item, it'll be helpful. So it was
Yeah.
moved and seconded by me and Joyce. Any further discussion?
None.
Any chiefs? Sound good? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Jeff, would you also include Joy Knutson on all of that, since she's the liaison to the school district, please? Thanks.
Pedestrian, actually, I want to skip to EB since Mary's here.
Okay.
And Mary, if you want to come to the podium and kind of recap us on the pedestrian crossing signals in the city of Hudson.
Mary Brad, 514 Elizabeth Way. Really, I was kind of brought into this later. I believe that the visually impaired, some of the visually impaired teachers or volunteers had come previously requesting that we reevaluate the stoplights downtown Hudson and have them ADA compliant for the visually and hearing impaired. They're not currently. I think my son is visually impaired, and he said the one on Vine and Carmichael does what he needs to be done, but there's nothing that happens downtown Hudson. The reason why they're more aware of that is because that's where they take them to train to learn how to cross the streets with their canes and listen for traffic and what have you. So they are hoping that we can start to, take these main intersections that have a lot of traffic as such and start to get them to become ADA compliant. And I think the thought was it was going to happen when Highway 35 was redone, and it didn't happen. So that's kind of why we're back here. And I was hoping people would show up today, but it was last minute when I told them about it. So even my son was supposed to be here, and he is not. So
Okay.
that's what I got.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to to Aaron, our city engineer, who's got a little more information.
Yeah, hi. I am curious, what is the intersection they do training on?
They train all downtown.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are you,
Vine and Second Street, where there's stoplights, they're training.
okay,
They'll walk, they go to St. Paul and train as well.
sure,
They'll
yeah.
get on buses, they've gone on an airplane. I mean, they try and train them for every scenario.
But you said Vine and Carmichael beeps for them?
Vine and Carmichael, Matthew said beeps if he pushes
Okay,
the button.
got it.
I'm not certain, that's what he says it does. One of the bigger issues is hybrid and electric cars. They can't hear them, right? And they're trained to teach for the noise, because I have a hybrid and it does that funny noise when you back up. And the reason why that noise is in place is so people who are visually impaired or hearing impaired know that something is coming, right? It's kind of like when things beep in reverse at Home Depot, right? So it's the same thing. So those are in place already, but yeah, the stoplights, like if they have the noise, they know they can cross. Obviously, they would still want to hear for the cars, but it's become more and more difficult with the changes with electric and hybrids and.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just curious because
Yeah.
so yeah, I am looking into it. I think it's definitely important that we do have the APS system is what they call them, like with the push buttons. And so I have contacted WISDOT. I know that was kind of an outstanding thing. Like, would WISDOT, install this? And so it is considered a connecting highway, so it would be up to the city to install it. So we did get that answer. And so we are actually moving forward. We're going to look at getting some quotes from some electrical companies that can install the push buttons. We should be able to retrofit the existing signals. We may have to relocate some of them so they're like a little bit closer to the pedestrian ramp to actually like meet the ADA requirements, but we are looking into it. And once we get an estimate for how much that would be, we would bring forward to whichever committee we have to go through first and kind of see how we can get that into our budget needs. So I'm not sure what, if it would be this year, what the priority is for timing. There's potential we could apply for a grant with WISDOT to get some money to help with it, but that would take a little longer with their application process. So yeah, so we're gonna reach out and get some actual estimates and see what it would actually take to get it installed.
Excellent.
For sure at Vine and Walnut, and then probably Cooley as well. And then moving forward, I would hope that as we're redoing signal systems to absolutely keep that in mind to be installed.
Include them in the
Yeah,
install.
just-
Locust too, right? Would it be Locust Street too?
No traffic light.
Yeah,
That's right there, that's just
yeah, those are, So those would be the 3 right now we'd be looking at.
Yeah, and then the ones on Carmichael, that would be state control, I'm assumed, the ones that,
The ones, not every just the ones like on the ramps, would be state control. So do the ones on the ramps have it? I would have to look. So
yeah.
if there is if there are concern with the 2 on the ramp, actually what we would just need would be like more of a letter from you, and then we can actually just reach out, and we do just kind of have to show that there's persons with disabilities using those intersections, because they are actually, WISTOT is doing it in North Hudson because their chief of police contacted WISTOT about their system at the intersection, I think, of Monroe and 35 doesn't have it, so they are putting it in on their dime at that one because they own and maintain that one.
Okay.
So if we do get more specific information, like which intersections are being used, we could potentially get them involved with like
Sure.
the Carmichael.
I'll have him take an inventory as he crosses
Right,
all the time
yeah.
to his dad's in Red Cedar Canyon versus me by the high school, so.
Oh, okay.
He's going
So
back
that
and
whole
forth all the
corridor,
time, yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
So, okay, perfect. I
Yep.
appreciate it, thank you.
So thank you. We'll keep on it, Mary, so we get those addressed. You're welcome. Thanks for bringing it back to us. Okay, number E, A, is discussion possible action on the traffic calming policies for the city of Hudson. So, Aaron,
Yep.
now I know you've got a pretty good in-depth program here, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, I put together a fairly, long presentation, so I don't necessarily want to just go through it. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. I wanted to, I know there's the whole toolbox of things, but I think it would also be helpful for the discussion to be, what do you guys see as like the main topics we would want to include in a traffic calming policy? I guess, has it already been decided that we want one? Or is that even up for discussion?
We've decided.
We've never
Okay,
officially
okay,
decided, but
okay,
I'm pretty
so-
sure it's pretty
Right,
in
so
our
that would be
face.
part of, it's like,
Yeah.
do we want one? What are the components? Because just looking at a lot of, there's a lot out there, a lot of other cities have them. There is a very wide degree of what other communities do as far as the application process, fees, how we pay for it, timing. And so I really wanted to have that discussion because that is what would be the beef of a traffic calming policy. And then you kind of get into the different toolbox, I guess you would say, is you kind of have all these options. I think each situation is different where it's not just going to be like, we're going to do this everywhere. That's really going to depend on how we study it and, what the location is and how that's driving it.
Just not to interrupt, but
Yeah, oh,
District
yeah.
3, alderperson Joy Knudsen, and I agree with her that it's the city of New Richmond, which is the comparable to us, is what we should probably base ours off of.
Got it, yep.
Unless there's something similar, also in the state of Wisconsin, as we have drafted ordinances on other issues from like Franklin, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Similar in size and scope.
Yeah.
But New
got
Richmond,
it.
I think, would be the starting point.
Sure, yeah, and I think, yes, I like theirs. I think ours could have some more detail, since some of theirs is a little, it's not as detailed, like, obviously, I even looked at the city of Minneapolis is like really detailed, we don't, they have a huge number of requests, they need a whole, ranking system, like, we definitely don't need to go into that level of detail.
We
So
may
I
have
think
to at
it's-
some point.
well-
We've had enough of these requests.
Yeah, so I guess a few of the, just some of the benefits of having one would be it's like really standardizes the approach to address safety with the community.
I think that's good to be able to point to a policy like this
Yeah.
when we get a complaint.
Right,
Because right now, it's kind of just, we bring it to public safety, and
Yes.
public safety goes, well, you need a traffic calming policy.
right.
So, I think that
Yeah.
having a process, and then a good way of tracking all of these requests.
Yes,
So
yep.
that if so let's say we turn somebody down and say, no, there's nothing that we want to do right now. Well, first of all, we'd have a record of it for when that road gets redone, and then there's an opportunity to put something in that's more permanent. But also, if we get another complaint later on, then we've got a record that we've got multiple complaints.
Joyce, let's hold off.
Sorry.
Let her
Okay,
roll.
sorry.
Let
There's
her
a
roll
lot to
this
it,
out.
yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah, then, we kind of do more of data-driven results and kind of just fair and effective for everyone in the neighborhood. Some things to keep in mind is, well, right now the city doesn't have like a dedicated resources to fund projects. So there are, I think Minneapolis, they have a certain amount every year that they actually put towards
Traffic calming.
Traffic calming, yes. We have obviously a limited staff capacity right now. It's me and one other for the engineering department. So, addressing, it does take a lot of time to go through all of these. So just something to keep in mind, limited staff. Emergency vehicle response time could be affected, the maintenance. And then also, if you do something on one street, you want to think, well, now is the problem just going to go to a new street? So a lot of things to keep in mind, and that can be kind of maybe situational for that one. So kind of the process would be a community member submits an application. So one, we need to decide which streets are even available within our city to be considered for traffic calming, and a lot of that would be just local streets only. Maybe we exclude truck routes, exclude obviously anything that's not just under City of Hudson jurisdiction, and any basically arterial collector, county or state highway. So kind of the ones with a larger traffic volume, and I have a map you can see specifically which ones are the collectors and the arterials. And then, who is eligible to apply? Is it just residents? Is it property owners, business owners, organizations? Would we want to do an application fee? I think one of the policies had a $350 just to do the application, and part of that could kind of go to, I'm not necessarily suggesting we do that, I'm just telling you what some things are out there. Could go to staff time looking into it and even to maybe start a fund to implement things. So basically submit the application, we kind of review data, we take the data and make a recommendation, and then there's also a component of actually having neighborhood support that recommends the treatment. So it's not just one person, we come up with a lot of them were like 60% of the affected area have to basically be on board with it. So that's another component, basically. How much support do you need from the other residents that would be affected in that area? Kind of what is your affected area? All of those details we could get into. Let's see. So, yep, I like that. Having an actual application, like you said, Joyce, to actually keep track of these, like, someone like me comes in, has this issue been a problem before? There's really no system of keeping track of everything. The data collection part of it, we would look at, accident history, are there pedestrian safety issues, speed, of course, and then obviously look to, fire, public works, school about, what their needs are and concerns would be as well. I did like New Richmond had a few, so what actually is a problem? Is it just one person speeding? Is it, so I like they have the average speed of vehicles exceeds the posted speed limit, and the 85th percentile exceeds more than 5%. So basically, if that criteria wasn't met, we kind of say, there's probably not a need to do anything. So I like having some criteria around like what does speeding actually mean. Let's see.
What did you mean by the 85% and the 5%?
That's kind of, I think if the 85 percentile exceeds So if it's 25 miles an hour, if the 85 percentile, which is like where most of the traffic would be driving, is 30 or over, then that would constitute like
Oh, okay.
that speeding was met. You know, that we think there's a concern, basically.
Well, what is the state statute definition of speeding?
Speed signs are absolute. So 26 is technically a violation by state law.
Okay.
Now, the NTSA has a different standard.
What's that standard then?
10.
10 miles over? Well, there's a big confusion right there. State says 1 mile and
National
says 10.
Well, but the, you know, the presentation that Dean had given before was talking about how just a small increase in speed increased the risk of fatality
Yep.
for an accident.
Yep.
And that's the criteria that we should be looking at.
Then we would go to the state minimum. Go on.
Yeah. Yep.
And one thing,
yeah.
great work that Dean did, but I want to look forward, not backwards on everything. And this is Aaron's chance to shine.
Thanks. So, you know, another thing, you know, do we deploy like a test or temporary, you know, solution and then collect more data to see if it was actually worked? So that could be, you know, there's probably some things that are easier to do temporary, but you can do a lot with those delineators like you're, you know, already doing on 9th. And, you know, is it actually doing something before we actually like reconstruct something? And move to a permanent solution. And then the whole aspect of community engagement. So at what point should multiple residents kind of, you know, be saying their concerns? One of the applications you kind of needed like multiple resident support to even like go with your application for the city to even start looking into anything. Or, you know, do you just do it after we've collected data and verify that a complaint is valid? Then, you know, do you feel the rest of the, you know, maybe in New Richmond was 60% too, and I saw that number in a few different ones. And then just the project implementation, so a very big factor, just, yeah, are we willing to spend a certain amount every year? Do we just, you know, as solutions with, I think, the New Richmond as a solution, then as funding becomes available, so we just work through something unique every time. So it may not be able to be implemented as fast because we kind of have to plan ahead for it, depending on what the cost. Some cities even had the residents paying a certain amount for the actual like devices and implementation of
In the
items.
past, we've done that a couple times,
Okay.
in particular newer home associations.
Got it, okay.
And that would make sense, but we talked about this in previous discussions, was having the residents share the cost could put a burden on the residents that do have financial limitations, and we don't want this to only be available to people who can afford it.
Correct.
Same with the application fee.
Almost a goodwill donation.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's there's nothing wrong with soliciting funds to
Right.
to get these things going, but
Right. And then, yeah, just how should enforcement and just education in general for, you know, speeding? And I haven't looked into so much what kind of educational, you know, aspects there are that we could do. But, you know, how does that play a part in this as well? And then just the whole toolbox of items. So I don't know if you want me to go through
Yes.
each one or if you, okay. So this is kind of a list. It is a list of, you know, a lot of the different options you could do for traffic calming. So we have, you could do just pavement markings and signage. So, you know, adding crosswalk striping, adding actual lane delineation like the center line and edge lines to kind of make the travel lane narrowed. That's kind of an easier one to implement. you can do, there's the little easy pedestrian signs, crosswalk pedestrian paddle, they call it in the image, that you can put in the middle of a crosswalk. So this one the toolbox items, there was kind of on the left-hand side with the cost and timeline. So this one, it says, expected crash reduction is varied. And for the speed-related signage and pavement markings, there was some observation in another city that it supports a reduction in speed. Like you mentioned, Lynn, stop signs are not a method of traffic calming, so it has shown if there is actually unwarranted that it might actually decrease the safety of pedestrians and motorists and indicate that drivers kind of increase their speed before and after the stop sign to make up for lost time. So the warrants is kind of a traffic study whether like a four-way stop would be warranted. So there's specific criteria that would need to be met. So that's not really an option. That would be part of like this type of toolbox. They have the speed humps. So that's, a raised, I feel like most people know what they are. So they may reduce speeds, may reduce traffic volumes. They could increase noise. It definitely could impact drainage if we went from gutter to gutter. It may shift traffic to parallel streets because people know there's a speed hump on that street, so they're going to go down a different one. And it could cause bus passengers discomfort. And this does say 45% pedestrian vehicle crashes reduced and 51% for bicycle vehicles. So it does have a nice expected crash reduction. Then we have a speed table or a raised crosswalk, which is essentially the same thing, except it's more specific at an intersection or at a crossing location versus, say, in the middle of between intersections. So it kind of has the same effect for advantages and disadvantages. Then we have the central island or median refuge. So this is something where you would see a median put in the center of the roadway. So really as someone's getting towards an intersection, it's just gonna make you slow down because you're narrowing the lane and there's a lot more things to be aware of as you're driving through the intersection. So this actually has a really high, the 69% crash reduction. And yeah, we definitely have a few examples of this around town. On Hanley, we have this. Then we have the bump outs, curb extensions. This is really an advantage. It reduces, it's again kind of has that as cars approach an intersection, just visually kind of want to slow down because their travel lane is getting narrower. This definitely could impact drainage, so this would be a bigger cost. You might have to add additional catch basins because of how the drainage would be. It also is nice, it reduces the length that a pedestrian has to just cross the street, so just really that's very nice as well. And then we have kind of the mid-block, they call them a choker, but it's essentially just kind of narrowing up the road in the middle between intersections. So kind of same idea of just making
hourglass kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And then with that is the chicane, chicane, yeah. That's where more you're making a curve, so you kind of put two and you have to go around a curve versus a straight line, so that's just gonna automatically make you slow down. That actually didn't have much of a reduction in speed according to the information, so that was kind of interesting. The traffic circle, that would be, it's not a roundabout. It kind of acts like that, but it is just more, a circle plopped in a normal intersection, so you don't necessarily have to do anything additional, and that's kind of an obvious block from you really having to slow down to navigate around that. That surprisingly also did not have a huge, crash reduction rate. And that could definitely be more of a, maintenance and plowing. And then you could even go to making something a one-way or a partial closure at an intersection to kind of try to reduce your traffic volume. So that is really going to be situational. And the speed display sign is, Matt shows what speed you're driving and the speed limit next to it. So that's kind of a nice educational, low, and that's a good low-cost one. And that's all.
I had a constituent add a couple. I told
Yeah,
them that I
sure.
would ask you
Okay.
if they would fit in this toolbox. And he was, one, could we drop the signs? It was the same gentleman from last meeting. Could we drop the signs on the city streets down a foot to get more in line with the driver's vision?
Oh, okay.
Possibly. Number two, when he was promised a sign, he had to get a jab in there, which is completely appropriate. Putting fluorescent tape on the sign itself for reflection, I believe.
Sure.
And then what is the ticket for going over, change it from 35 to 25 speed limit? What's the first ticket? And then, of course, his fourth option was no more warnings. It's just an automatic ticket. So putting more teeth into the ordinance in the bond schedule would be helpful too. The first offense, instead of $225, let's say it's,
We don't have control over that. It's a certain threshold, not less than this, not more than this, and those are set by the Ninth Circuit Judicial.
oh,
It's all done by the.
so it's uniform through the state and the circuit court, so we can't set any higher ticket price.
Judge Garrity can, but like I said, those protocols are all set by the Ninth
Okay.
Judicial District, so she follows those rules. So it's gonna be the same here as it is in North Hudson. Obviously, if it's a deputy that stops you and writes you a ticket, the court costs for circuit court are higher, so the ticket's going to be more. Right? State patrol is gonna be the same as the county.
Okay.
But your municipal tickets are generally, you don't have as high a court cost, so your tickets aren't quite as much.
And we have
Still-
no
it's
say in
still-
that bond
it's still-
schedule.
It's still a grocery cart full of groceries,
So they automatically add the court costs to the ticket?
Yep.
So do you know what the base ticket price is then, or
Don't. I'd
would
have
you be able
like,
to
look at a bond book. and
give us
see.
just a quick summary of that next time, please?
Sure. And what specific, there's, thousands of tickets that could be, what, like,
Well, speeding,
at every threshold?
well, at 25 miles an hour is what we're really mainly
But
interested in.
within that, at every threshold?
Yeah, yes.
But he raises a very strong point about, and it's a tough conversation to have, but one thing I don't like about his item number 4 about no more warnings is we're taking away officer discretion.
Yes.
You're speeding to the hospital because your wife's having a baby. No warning?
Well, they should have called us.
I just had
Education.
a couple comments here. In the second, you sent me a couple documents.
Yep.
I really like the data-driven component that had the flow chart that went through and on the one set. So it went from, because when things are data-driven, you're going to be consistent and you're going to get the most effective results when you have data developed, that what works, what doesn't work, and when to address things. So it started with identify, and then that where you said that's where they would apply whatever, and we can adjust that. But then you analyze with the things I know you have done before of putting up the speed things. And then if the data is confirmed, then you look to the toolbox and see which one might be something, but it doesn't end there. Then there still has to be that data collection after that to see if it's, you reanalyze basically what you've done to see if it's effective, and if it's not, then it stops. So I really like that model. I can't remember where it was from. It was like a little flow chart you had on
Oh,
the.
okay.
It was on the second one that was like 150
Oh, okay,
pages
sure.
long.
Got it.
That was a good piece in that one, though. I think we need also to remember that, is the things we do on each of those, the disadvantages can be quite significant. And I was surprised about that some of the things you think will solve the problem actually can be very detrimental environmentally, and even safety-wise as well. We also have to, I think, keep in mind our emergency vehicles. If we're going to start making some changes on the shape of a road and the width of a road, we really need to be cautious about our emergency vehicles being able to access those areas. So those were just the comments when I went through the presentation you sent us.
Comments, John?
Yeah, let's see, we talked about application fees. And Lynn made a good point about checking to see the results. And that's one of the things that we did on Chestnut was we started by lowering the speed limit to 15. And we found and the black box is probably the better thing to use for checking things rather than the speed trailer, because the speed trailer may reduce things. We're going to get better raw data from the black box. But the 15 mile an hour speed limit change made no difference to the behavior. But putting in the temporary speed humps did make a difference and did reduce the speed.
May I interject? Behavior of the bus drivers or the?
No, of all
All
of the data that was collected in the black box, so it would be all vehicles
Okay.
that were detected. I like the idea of having criteria. So, for example, having 2 of the 3 criteria in order to make a change. I think that we need to probably take a very close look at that criteria and maybe make some changes or add some more criteria, because then we've got something more than just having a citizen complaint, which is what we've been following up on so far. And so the idea of a flow chart is really a good idea, because then things are, and consistency is really important, which we've already talked about too. And then I like the idea of trying a temporary solution first before we, so that, especially for the roads that are going to be reconstructed in the near future, then we do need to test out temporary solutions before installing permanent ones. So, anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to see this.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the funding?
Well, hold on a second, if you wouldn't mind. That's a different topic altogether, but is there anybody in the audience that wants to address? Yes, sir, come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for all of you. I'm grateful. It's mostly a thankless job. I mean, if you save a life, nobody potentially is aware of it, right? But my name is Kyle Amfinson at 1203 2nd Street. I completely trust you guys to do the how and the where with the traffic calming, but I just wanted to bring attention to the why, because I think with like the 60% complaint thing, in many cases it's walkability, right? How the people live in the town want to get through the town on foot and bicycle, and I want to be able to send my kids to the downtown to get ice cream. And so whether or not people on 2nd Street are complaining or not, it potentially should be traffic calmed just from the standpoint of walkability of the area. I mean, when you talk about what people are proud about in the community, most of the time it's in close proximity to the downtown, and it's because it's a super walkable area, right? The lakefront has no traffic. First Street is so busy that traffic never goes 25. That is self-calmed. I mean, you can't go 18 miles an hour on First Street, right? So anyways, I just think the why is potentially valuable too, because if nobody's complaining and yet nobody's walking, and we're inducing demand on traffic, which then causes people to drive and get in accidents when they would have been on foot if it would have been safer in the first place. That's the only thing I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Funding. You really want to bring that word up?
Well,
That's always the
It's going to be a
issue.
necessary part of it.
Right. And the answer could be if we identify something, we, try to roll it into the next, cycle and.
well, something else that, so for example, we had recommended that a bunch of speed humps be purchased so that we could try them out all over. So then those, they can always be reused, so that's an investment that we can continue to use, and as permanent solutions get installed, we can move them to other spots too. But this is safety, it's, if we have to spend the money to improve the safety, that's our job.
We have to do it logically. We've identified areas that we have issues with. Now it's time for us to find viable solutions to roll out and do it in a systematic way where it's, first we try it, data-driven.
But don't we need a policy first, though? I mean, if we're going to follow the
Yes.
policy, I think our first action should be to
Right.
define what our policy is and get that in place, see what the potential costs would be of the toolbox items, so that when we write the policy, we know we're going to have to come up with this much money, find out where that's going to come from, so we don't just start, well, let's try this and this and this, until we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I think our first goal needs to be to define and write a traffic calming policy that works for the city of Hudson, with the things that we've talked about included in that, before we start saying, you get a stop sign and you get a stop sign.
Everybody gets a stop
Is
sign.
Richmond's a policy or an ordinance?
It's a policy is what it says, I guess, on the top of it.
Okay.
It's traffic calling policy.
It would be reassuring for citizens to know that there's something they can do besides feeling alone, presenting something. Now you know that I start here and this is where it's going to proceed after that, rather than seeming, well, you addressed it for that, you didn't address it for this, that we'd have, this is why yours was addressed and this is why this one was not addressed. And we could refer to our policies so that it's fair, consistent, and we'll get effective results.
So my suggestion would be, the next step would be for you to craft the policy based off of New Richmond's. That's my preference.
Okay.
And then bring it back to us, and then we start digging into the toolbox, what items should be in there. I think everything that was addressed as far as who identifies the streets is exactly what that is in there. Everything but the the arterial
Yep.
35, those roads that we have no control over, but the rest of the city, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with New Richmond's policy of having
Well, it's a
60%. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, yeah, this is a good starting point.
Yeah.
No question about it. But the 60% of the people in the affected area, that puts a huge burden. I mean, I think that Lynn's point of having it data-driven is probably a better driver than,
But that would be data, right there, that it's not a neighbor, it is a community or a neighborhood that sees it. So I think you can include there, and I don't know that we can set a number or a percent right now, but if we start with the policy, then we can start editing and modifying the components that best suit the city of Hudson.
and we can always modify the policy later if we find that certain things aren't working.
I just like 60 because it's over it's over half of the neighborhood saying, yes, there's an issue there. So it quantifies the problem.
Yeah, I see the diversity of our neighborhoods as far as, how many, all right, so if you're the only person on the block that's got a small child, and then you may have a hard time getting.
Well, not only that, sidewalks.
and-
I don't have sidewalks
That's
in my
right.
neighborhood.
Yes.
There's all sorts of sidewalks down here. I mean, there are a lot of.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that needs to be addressed, so
Do we need
yeah,
to make a
having,
motion to have her do that? I make a motion that Aaron puts together a draft.
Do you move?
I move that Aaron puts together a possible, initial draft of traffic calming policies for the city of Hudson to be reviewed at a later date.
I'll second it.
I would like to see it on every meeting moving forward, so we keep it on the burner.
Just like where
If
it's
there's
at,
something not,
continue
if it's
to
not a
talk
big
about it.
change to it,
Right,
we don't expect you to be here at every public safety meeting.
yeah,
But give us a snapshot
sure,
under
okay,
informational items.
like where we're at with it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, another component was, you know, like Minneapolis did it, I think actually Bloomington, it was like there was a certain time frame that, you know, applications are due in February. And we can kind of consolidate our efforts, like this is the time of year we look at the complaints. You know, I'm not trying to make more work for myself, but there could be, you know, this would also address the comment about it, just that street, you know, that's complaining. Maybe we have an in-person open house and say these are all the areas we're looking at, and then you can really get more perspective, I guess, from the community.
And we could include that. I think that would be a
Yeah,
good thing for you
that-
to look at, including in the draft of the policy.
Yeah.
Have an open house.
So, right, yeah.
So we get
like-
community input through it.
Right. Yep. So, okay.
Any further discussion? Chiefs, do you have anything?
Not right now.
I know your whole thing is parking in front of hydrants.
Well, it's gonna be, a lot of it's gonna depend on design too.
Well, I know,
Perfect example is gonna be down here on Second, where they put the Center Islands in on is it St. Croix.
Yeah,
We can't turn a ladder truck down those streets because that's in the way.
it worked, but it worked for the wrong vehicles.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So just, we'd have to evaluate the whole thing.
so we're gonna need your input on these things then. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And is same with your apparatuses
Yeah,
too.
and speed humps are, they slow us way down, and regardless of how slow you go over it, it really slams the patient in the back of the truck. But
And the same with Jeff. The squad cars run into a bank robbery, God help us, but you're flying over those speed humps. And like we said, we're not gonna they're not going everywhere, but it's just another tool in the box, is what we gotta look at. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Seconded that one.
I did.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for spending the time with us and the time you will be spending with us. Welcome to public safety.
She's our new best friend.
Okay, number 6, informational items.
I would like to recognize that today is International Firefighter Day and to thank Fire Chief Drew Spielman and all the firefighters in our area that protect us.
Yay. Attaboy.
SPIELM.
I got it. Who spell checks?
All right, we'll jump into department reports, EMS. John, I didn't see
I did-
any paper. Oh,
I did report last week,
Yes.
pretty hefty, so I
Okay.
toned it down a little bit today.
he still outdid you guys. He's got color.
I'm budget oriented, Randy.
Just give you April stats is all I wanted to do. So total calls for EMS, 116 in the city of Hudson. Interfacility transfers, there were 76. We separate interfacility out of the matrix when we do response times, because a lot of times if an ambulance is on a call and there's an interfacility that's not emergent, the time still gets stamped when they called that call in, so it could be an hour before they get to the hospital. So it would really affect the stats dramatically. But nonetheless, it's still a EMS call. So the numbers you're seeing on the left for the 6-month, last 6-month historical data is subtracted all interfacility runs out of there. In comparison to April of 2022, we had 91 calls in the city of Hudson. 91 of those for this past month, 91 of them were lights and siren response, 25 were not lights and sirens. Overall response time for average was 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and 90% of all the calls we responded to that were emergent, we responded within 7 minutes and 1 second. There was no mutual aid calls in the city of Hudson for the month of April.
So has the county implemented the new dispatch system yet, or when will that be?
Nope, they're still working on it. When we went through that initial process, they said it could be up to a year before that's implemented. So both sides have a ton of work to do behind the scenes to do that. But the one thing I will say is the county has really made a difference in how they're calling us. I mean, it's like we see in other cities now, where we're getting toned out simultaneously.
That's good.
So when we're hearing the pager going off, a lot of times our dispatch is on there at the same time. So that really helps, and we're seeing it in the numbers. The numbers are more realistic.
Good.
When they have the CAD to CAD interface completed, that's going to be such a workload off of the county to be able to do that. So they're going to be able to multitask way better than they can do today when they have to pick up the phone. So
Good.
we're still waiting, but
So
It's in the
possibly by the
works.
end of the year?
I hope so. I haven't even asked. I was with Terry today. I didn't even want to ask him. But when I don't hear anything, I hear something when they run into a problem. They
Okay.
pull everyone together, and it's been 3 months since we've had a conference call on it. So I think it's going good. I do want to say too, because I mentioned last week when we were here that Friday we were going to have a meet and greet with a grateful patient. That was just an outstanding event. Everyone that was involved with the call was there at the event. We had the leadership there from those departments. The family was super grateful, and thanks, Drew, for allowing us to use the station. So anyways,
That's
I just wanted to
great. You
report on
guys
that.
should showcase that more and
Yeah.
make a big deal of that.
Yeah, we try and be respectful of the family too.
At their, whatever
Right,
level's
yeah.
comfortable, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks again. That's all I got for EMS.
Great, thanks. Chief?
Not much from last week other than the updated numbers for April. Busy month.
He had a little color too, John.
Good.
Yeah.
Try not to get shown up here, you know. Jeff will have to get his crayons out and color his next.
Ouch.
Obviously, the April 1st snowstorm really slammed us hard. We did about 30 of those 48 calls in the city were in 48 hours. So
Oh my
it was
gosh.
pretty crazy, which slammed our payroll budget last month. But anyways, so we're up. Obviously, this year, quite a few calls. We did have a house fire in the city in April. Wasn't too terrible of a house fire, but enough where they're going to be out for quite a while for restoration and everything. So, but everything went well there. And I just added a sheet today, just on time of day when the calls are coming in, and it's a little skewed because of the snowstorm. We had most of those calls were between midnight and 3 a.m. But as you can see, the majority of our calls are happening between about 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. in the city. And the reason I included this was going forward, and you'll see when it comes budget time, I am going to request another person during the day. So I just want to start getting these numbers in front of you now to show the need that's there. So other than that, that's all I got.
Excellent. Any questions?
Yeah, nothing other than that. If we do that same chart with ours, our busy time is 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning until
Yep.
6, 7 o'clock.
Well, that's why everybody's up moving around.
Same for
You know.
us.
It's gonna be, that's gonna be your heavy volume times.
Yep.
Chief?
Nothing additional other than updated calls for service that we had in the month of April. 1,711 calls for service. It's 56, a little over 56 and a half calls per day. We average 6 shifts per day in April, which amounts to about 9.5 calls per shift. In one shift is like one officer's 10-hour shift, right? So we average 6 officers working throughout the entire day on patrol, taking calls for service, and that's what those numbers reflect. So the big ones obviously are 911 hang-ups and accidents again, traffic-type complaints with disabled vehicles. 8 domestics that's a high one. Those, along with emergency detentions and welfare checks, generally take several hours. Depending on how severe, it might take several officers on those as well to deal with. A lot of extra patrols, which is basically those calls are logged either when someone requests extra patrol in their neighborhood for something, or it's when an officer is out running radar somewhere. They log as an extra patrol versus the traffic complaints that I send them when you send me the information on speeding in a certain area. I get out there and run radar. Those are logged as extra patrol requests. And then the other big one is the miscellaneous thing, right? Which it could be anything. Comes in as a miscellaneous complaint, and then it could get categorized into a theft or a burglary or damage to property or something like that. But other than that, really no large updates. 280 traffic stops for the month. They have gotten the message that there is this time of year, like we talked about last month, the weather warms up, the snow and ice goes away, people start to drive, with a little heavier foot, whether that's for whatever reason, right? But the guys and gals are aware of it, and they're out there, they're trying to do their best at it, so.
So, have they been moved around a lot as far as the traffic stops, or are they concentrating on certain spots?
Well, they primarily, the traffic stops occur all over the city.
Of course.
And just because they might do an extra patrol on 9th Street, for instance, and sit there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and only have one traffic stop associated with that event. They could, so it all depends.
Okay.
It all depends. I wouldn't even know how to run a report on the location of every traffic stop.
Okay.
Well, with all of your departments, in particular, Jeff, we are 100% behind your officers and your guys' staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So we thank you for protecting our citizen and our city.
I will say, when I was coming here today, everyone was doing the speed limit.
Yeah.
I tried to.
Right down Vine Street, right? Yeah. As you walked in 1 or 2 minutes late.
That's why.
Any communications or items for our future agendas? Again, we'll have the traffic on from going forward until we finally get a policy nailed down. And again, I thank you, Aaron, for your time. Appreciate that, and I thank you all. Is there any?
No, I think just the policy should be a high priority, because we've got so many complaints that need to be addressed. And we get more all the time.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.